guys, it's Shara from Woodshop Diaries, and today I'm so excited to be showing you how to build this super simple contemporary shelf. What's really cool about this design is that it's so easy to build. You can build it from standard material that you can get at your big box store, or you can do like I did and build it out of walnut and white oak hardwood. All you need is a few boards, a little wood glue, and a couple of screws, and you'll be good to go. So if you guys are ready to get going, let's get building. I've partnered up with Jen Woodhouse to bring you the plans for this project, and you can find the plans and the tutorial both in the links in the description below. This plan calls for using 1x12s, 1x2s, and 2x2s, but I bought my lumber rough sawn from the local hardwood store. So the first thing I did was plane all of my boards down to 3/4 inches thick. I had walnut for the shelves and white oak for the shelf supports. But if you wanted, you could totally use just standard pine or spruce from the big box store or the local lumber yard and just stain it contrasting colors to achieve the same effect. I cut down 3 wider boards to be the 1x12 shelves, and then I cut the rest of my wood to 1.5 inches wide so that I could glue pieces together to make a 2x2, and then the other 1.5 inch wide strips went onto the back of the shelves. Once I had all of my lumber milled up, it was time to make my 2x2s. If you remember, I planed all of my wood down to 3/4 inches thick, so when it was time to have a 2x2, I actually had to glue these boards together. Since they were already 3/4 inch thick and 1.5 inches wide, all I had to do was glue 2 together just to make a 2x2, which it would be 1.5 inch square. So I glued up my 2x2s. I glued them all at once because I only had so many clamps, but I made sure that I was not gluing all the boards together. I was only gluing 2 boards together at a time. I was just clamping them all at once. Once I had all of my clamps in place, I wiped off the excess glue because that's going to save me a ton of time sanding these later. Once the glue was dry, I removed the clamps and I had my 2x2s, well, kind of ready to go. The next thing I did was start sanding. And sanding, a whole lot of sanding to get all the glue and any saw marks off and just to make a nice smooth 2x2. The majority of this project was spent gluing and sanding since I used hardwood lumber and had to glue up my own 2x2s. If you used your own, or if you bought 2x2s from your big box store and didn't have to glue these up, you're probably going to save a ton of time. So pros and cons to using the hardwood versus the standard big box store lumber. Totally up to you. But the next thing I did after I had all of my 2x2 sanded was, before I started cutting them to assemble the shelf, I went ahead and glued together the last thing I have to glue together, which was the shelf pieces. Each shelf, there's 3 shelves by the way, each shelf had a 1x2 glued onto the back side of it, kind of as like a lip on the back side. I just glued these together. You could glue and brad nail if you wanted. You could also glue and screw from the bottom side, but I just glued and clamped until the glue was dry, and I thought that was sufficient enough to hold it. Once I had my shelves all glued up, I let the glue dry, and while that glue was drying, I started cutting up my 2x2s for the assembly. Finally, it's time for assembly. Once I had all my 2x2s cut down to the right size, I drilled pocket holes in the ends of the shelf supports that go from the front legs to the back legs. I assembled the shelf supports using pocket holes and 2.5 inch pocket hole screws. One thing to note is that with using hardwood, you should use fine thread pocket hole screws. I used coarse thread pocket hole screws for the first few pieces, and it was very, very difficult to drive. Fine thread pocket hole screws are the way to go if you're using hardwood, but also if you didn't want to go with the pocket hole screws because they're kind of difficult to get your drill in once you put the other leg on, another option would be using dowels. So this plan calls for pocket hole screws, but just if you wanted something different or another option, you could always use dowels. Once I had my 3 shelf supports attached, I cut down my shelves to the final length and gave them a good sanding before final assembly. It's a lot easier to sand before you put everything together than it will be to sand after everything's already assembled. So go ahead and sand everything individual pieces before you assemble it all together. I promise you it'll save you a whole lot of time later. Once my shelves were good and sanded and my shelf supports were sanded again as well, it was time to finally put all the pieces together. All you gotta do at this point is add your shelves. To add my shelves, I made sure that I had the correct overhang according to the plans on each side of each shelf support, and I used 2-inch wood screws through the bottom shelf supports to attach the shelves. You could use brackets here if you wanted, or simply wood glue as well. It was a little bit difficult to get the drill in because it's kind of a tight spot. I highly recommend putting your top shelf on first and working your way down, because if you work your way from the bottom to the top, you won't have enough room to get your drill in to drive those screws. My camera battery died before I got to the last shelf. I apologize for that, but you get the idea. Obviously, the last shelf would be by far the easiest shelf to attach, so I don't think you need a detailed video on that. To finish off the project, I've finished the wood with a couple coats of clear poly, and once that was dry, it was ready to decorate. I love how simple this shelf design is. I love how versatile that it can be. It's great for displaying some of your favorite decor items, but it could also be even cute as a shoe shelf. I don't know if you'd want to put your dirty shoes on your nice walnut and oak, but I still think it would be a cute idea. So if you're ready to build your own, be sure to check out the plans and all the details in the links in the descriptions below, and also be sure to check out all my other do-it-yourself videos and tutorials, and subscribe to this channel.